People don't leave jobs, they leave
You hear
people.
managers a lot. Yeah,
Managers,
people. Yeah,
people, right? That's what they
yeah.
leave. Yet, why is it that every advertisement for a job is all about the job?
Mhm.
So when we write job ads, it's not about the job. If you're an electrician, you know what an electrician does. Are
Right.
we gonna have the requirements so that, we compliant and all that? Yes. But let's talk about the person you're gonna work for. Let's talk about
Mhm.
your manager. Let's talk about how we do leadership, how we do communication, how we celebrate wins here. Let's talk about the culture stuff because that's what people are looking for. They're looking for a new leader. They're not looking for a new job.
Good morning, HR. I'm Mike Coffey, president of Imperative, bulletproof background checks with fast and friendly service. And this is the podcast where I talk to business leaders about bringing people together to create value for all stakeholders. I'm joined today by Ryan Englin. Through his company, Core Matters, Ryan provides coaching and training on attracting, hiring, and retaining rockstar employees in the blue collar trades. He is also author of Hire Better People Faster. And Ryan joins me today to discuss hiring and retaining great talent in the trades. Welcome to Good Morning HR, Ryan.
Mike, thrilled to be here. Lifelong dream. I'm so glad we made it happen.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate you being here. And this is a topic that's really close to my heart. I'm chair of the talent committee for the Fort Worth Chamber of Commerce, and a lot of our members are constantly saying we're having a hard time staffing these what we would traditionally call blue collar, but skilled trades often roles. And we hear a lot that the experienced older generation is retiring at a much faster pace than new workers are coming into that specific labor force. Is that what you're seeing with your clients?
Yeah, and we're all over the country and we see it everywhere. Like there's no area that's immune to this. It's estimated that 40% of tradesmen and women will be retiring within the next 7 to 10 years.
Wow.
I mean, we're already at a deficit of millions of jobs in the trades. Think about 40% leaving. That's a
Yeah.
lot.
It's interesting because I was talking to someone just yesterday, and they were talking about their son who tried college and it just wasn't a good fit, and really would like to be an electrician, and is
Mm.
looking at studying at a local community college to get some of that started. But it seems like, and it's probably a matter of incumbency driving some of the requirements to make it harder for people to get into a field, but they have to be sponsored by a master electrician even as they go through their training, and then they've got to do their apprenticeship. And it seems like it's this whole long process before, at least for electricians and maybe plumbers and other things too, I don't know, before they can really begin to have any level of autonomy in the process. And
Mm.
so it may be a discouragement to some folks about, do I really want to enter into this field if I've got to climb all these hurdles? But of course, I want to make sure that the person who's wiring my warehouse or my office knows what the heck
Yeah.
they're doing too. It's like, I've had one bad HVAC guy in my whole life, and after him, I'll never have another one.
Yeah. And the reality is every state has different requirements, and this could be state requirements that say you have to be
Mhm.
sponsored to get in the schools. Unions have different requirements. Like everybody's got different requirements. And this is one of the biggest challenges we have in the trades is that we're all waiting for them to do it. Right? Like we all want them to fix it. And it's like, wait a minute. What if we just decided to come together and come up with a universal standard for how we do this? It would make things so much easier. It'd be so much easier to market, so much easier to communicate, but we don't do that. In some states, to be an electrician, you have to be individually licensed. In other states, you don't. In some states, you have to go through a 4-year apprenticeship. In other areas, you don't. It makes it a real challenge depending on where you live, depending on where you grew up, where family's at. So, I mean, that is one of the barriers that we see. And I understand, I agree. If someone's going to be rewiring my house, I mean, they
Mhm.
could burn a house down. Like that's one
Yeah.
of the professions where people can literally die if you don't do your job right. So I'm all for licensing people smarter than me, assessing and testing these people to make sure
Mhm.
they know what they're doing. But we've got to be able to open it up more. We have to be able to create these opportunities without saying, hey, you better have a master electrician in your family or you're not getting in.
Mhm.
I know that there's one of the unions up in upstate New York. I was hearing this. They only accept 140 people a year into their apprenticeship program. 140. We have millions of electricians we need because
Right.
believe it or not, and this is what I love about electricians. People forget, who do you think connects the internet?
Oh, yeah.
Who
Right.
do you think's building these data centers? Who do you think's powering all this stuff? I mean, Google just put $10 million towards helping the next generation of electricians get started because guess what? They can't build data centers if there's not more electricians, and that's Google's livelihood.
Well, and I think there are probably other barriers, but it seems that th- at some point in the 70s or 80s, when I was growing up, the trades kind of where they had long been a pathway to middle class, they kind of got a bad rap, and we decided everybody needed to go to college. And certainly in my path, that was what was told us. College will create your life. That's your path to a sustainable income and a happy life. It's just not for everybody. But I
Yeah.
think a lot of my generation of parents are still telling their kids, "You got to go to college. You got to go to college." So, what do you think the barriers are there? Do you think it's the kids not being sold on it, or just not understanding what the trades are? And of course, we have to convince parents and school counselors and everybody else too.
Yeah, I think the one thing I want everybody to hear in today's show is something that I say all the time, and I've believed it for decades, but it's just not a popular way of thinking. And that it's that recruiting, the act of recruiting, whether it's an entry level or a skilled person or anything, the act of recruiting is a marketing activity.
Right.
People don't get this. People are blown away when I share this. They're like, no, 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 that's an HR thing. No, recruiting is a marketing activity. And when we think about getting people interested in the trades, we are recruiting, we are marketing. And here's what I think happened. So there's a generational gap. I'm Gen X, and I was raised that I would go to college because my education was the one thing people couldn't take away from me. I remember my grandma saying
Mhm.
that. She lived through the Great Depression. Everything got taken from her. But she's like, if she would have had an education, she would have been better off. So that was her thing. She taught my parents, which my parents then taught me because they didn't know any better.
Right.
And I think that there's a lot of people that they've just never questioned it. That's what we do because knowledge work became so popular in the 80s and 90s. And so now all of a sudden, it wasn't that your contribution to the economy was physical labor, because before that, it really was. Like the people, like there
Right.
had to be a human being powering something, doing something physical. And now in the late 80s and 90s, we all of a sudden could sit behind a desk and just use our brains. And
Mhm.
so I think that's part of the reason we didn't go continue to push the trades. And we said, hey, let's stay in college because that's all knowledge. You need that. And it's interesting because now here we are 40 years later. And I know a lot of employers, trades aside, that would rather hire someone that learned it out in the real world than learned it
Right.
in school. Yet the narrative is still there. And I think it's easier. So I see this a lot. It's easier for me to blame my problems on someone else than it is to acknowledge that I might be the problem.
Preach. Yeah.
See, if my kids go to a college and then that prevents them from getting what they want, well, that's not my fault. That's the college's fault.
Right.
Right? It's just like no one wants to work anymore. Everybody's lazy and entitled.
You hear
Well,
that? Yeah.
yeah. Well, that's not my fault. That's their fault.
Right.
But that's not what I find in the work that we do and the studies that we're a part of. Um, I'll shut up for a second and
No.
we can
Yeah.
dig into that.
Yeah. So, what do you think? What do you think the marketing message ought to be for employers who need young people to go into the trades and get that training? Not let's not even talk about yet recruiting existing skill away from competitors and all that. Just what do the industries or the employers need to do to get more people into the trades? How do they change that message?
Well, I think the one thing we need to do is we need to stop dissing our competitors in the trades. Like there's a plumber, and I remember their tagline was the smell good plumber. That's their tagline, smell good plumber. Oh, so what you're implying is every other plumber stinks.
Ah,
Well, no self-respecting kid of mine is going to go be a plumber because I don't want him being smelly
oh
and
yeah,
butt crack and all the stuff we make fun of plumbers, right?
right.
Uh, and we do this. We create shows like Dirty Jobs because it sells, but I don't want my kid going to have a dirty job. My kid's above that.
Hmm.
And but we continue to do this. We continue to come up with marketing slogans, taglines, and names of TV shows that basically say, yeah, this is lesser than.
Hmm.
We continue to do it. And then we wonder why no one wants these jobs. And that's where I see the big issue is if we were going to solve this problem, we would stop dissing our competition, we would stop dismissing these as dirty jobs, and we would start saying, you know what? Let me introduce you to John. John makes $140,000 a year as a construction superintendent. What would you do with $140,000?
Right.
And he got there in 12 years with no college debt. And then let's talk about John's lifestyle, like how much he works, what kind of cool stuff he does, show the projects. Like we would start looking at the trades and saying, this is why it's amazing. Like the family, the community that comes out of the trades, like there are corporations all over the world that would be jealous of that. They're like, look at that brotherhood. Look at how connected everybody is. But we don't talk about that. All we talk about is make a lot of money, don't go to college, don't get in debt. Like we tell everybody what not to do.
Right.
We don't spend any time telling them what to do.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I'll leave with is we need to stop getting in the schools. We need to stop going to the schools and think, hey, if we just get to them when they're teenagers, they'll know about this. Who's the most influential person that teenager has in their life?
Their parent,
Their parents.
if not their girlfriend or boyfriend, right? Yeah. Yeah.
But who's the one that's encouraging them to go to college? It's not
Right.
the kid.
Yeah.
It's not like the 17-year-old's like, oh, I can't wait for mom and dad to get in debt and send me to college. No, mom and dad are like, you're going to college. Yet we do nothing to market to the parents. We think the only thing we can do is get in when they're kindergartners and just keep dripping on them, which I'm not saying don't do that because there's an element of truth in that, but we can't just stop there. Their parents have the influence or social media has the influence. Why aren't we talking about this stuff? There's a group called oh my gosh, just blank. They're part of NCCER, Build Your Future. Build Your
Mhm.
Future. And they go around handing out baseball cards. And on the front of it is a plumber. And on the back is the specs, how much experience you need, how much money you make, how fast you can get. It's cool.
Yeah.
Who does baseball cards?
Right.
Everybody's
Yeah.
online. Where's the Instagram, post or the Snapchat filter? Like, where's that stuff? But we don't think like that. We think, well, in my day, we had baseball cards. So maybe today's kids will need baseball cards. It's like, no, we got to go where they're at. And we don't do that either.
So we got to work on the marketing. What do you think the biggest myths are about the labor market out there available for
Yeah.
for the skilled trades? What stories are employers telling themselves that might not be true, or how they need to reframe their own thinking about how they attract talent?
Well, I already touched on the lazy, entitled, no one wants to
Right.
work, right? Like we already touched on that. But I think one of the biggest myths out there is that we have a labor shortage. And I don't believe that to be true in what I've seen. Now,
Interesting.
are there some people that are growing faster than they can hire? Yeah. Does that feel like a labor shortage? Sure. But I also know that I've never, ever, ever talked to an employer who has issued less W-2s or the same number of W-2s that they had people employed at the end of the year. Like, think about that for a minute. If you got 400 people on December 31st and you issue 400 W-2s,
Mhm.
cool. No, they have 400 people employed and they issue 700 or 900 W-2s. That doesn't sound like a
Right.
shortage to me. It sounds like you have a retention problem.
Right. So so your argument is that you wouldn't have to worry so much about competing for talent if you just held on to your own talent.
If you could just keep them.
Yeah.
Now, is there an element of them making bad hiring decisions? Of course. Like,
Yeah.
oh, you can breathe? You're hired.
Right.
Like, you showed up on time for the interview, you're hired. Yes. But if they could, people don't want to train people anymore. I have this argument all the time that they're waiting for those unicorns to show up that have 20 years of experience and are going to do it their way. And then what they do is they hire people because they're desperate, and they spend no time training them.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're 6 months away from having your next excavator operator. You're 4 months away from having your next electrical apprentice.
Or
But
your
we
next
don't wanna
forklift
train them.
driver, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but we don't want to train them. So what happens is they come in, they tell us they know how to do it. We look at them for 2 or 3 days and we say, this guy's never going to cut it. And we fire him. Instead of investing in him and saying, how can we train you? And here's our apprenticeship program. Here's how we don't do that. We wait for the other guy to train them. And then we complain that there's a labor shortage. People want these jobs. The reality is people want these jobs. But it's that old crux of, well, I can't hire you because you don't have experience. And then the kid's like,
experience.
well, how do I get experience if no one's going to hire me? Like,
Right.
what do I do here? And I see it time and time again. We've been doing this for a long time, and we have maybe 1 or 2 clients that have actually had an accredited apprenticeship program. You know, they all say they want to train, but they all want to train the 5-year veteran. Nobody wants to
Right.
train the new guy.
So talk about apprenticeships, because I know, I'm in Texas, so unions aren't as strong as they used to be here, and I think in a lot of other places around the country. And they used to be the big source for a
There
lot
you
of the
went.
apprenticeship and training. What are you seeing now employers do when they're legitimately, want to try and do an apprenticeship? How are they structuring that?
Yeah, I would say that word apprenticeship really, it's a dying word.
Yeah, it does seem very 1940s for some
Yeah,
reason.
it's a dying word. I see a lot of people who have universities, they have training programs, they have all this. And what I find is that the companies that are invested in training the next generation, it's multifaceted approach. There's not just the apprenticeship program. There's not just the university. There's a lot of things. They're doing mentorships. They're taking that master electrician and they're pairing them up with a younger guy and they're training, coaching. They're building training shops. I've seen this a lot more, especially in electrical. I see this a lot in electrical where they'll take 2,000 square feet and they'll set up panels and they'll set up 4-way switches and they'll set up boxes and junction boxes and they'll set all this stuff up and let guys wire and rewire and
Mhm.
learn. And there's a point where every 90 days, a guy's got to spend a day in there just learning and brushing up his skills. So I see that kind of stuff a lot more than I see this. Here's a 2-year plan. You're going to do this, then you're going to do this, then you're going to do this. I don't see that as much. I would love to see it more because that's how you keep people engaged.
Mhm.
They know that you've got a plan for them to be there in 2 years.
Right. There's a future here, and I can
Yeah.
continue to. They're investing me in learning. I'll climb their ladder, whatever the thing. And I think that's one thing about trades that is different than a lot of office jobs. When you're in the corporate world, a lot of times the only way, unless you just change careers, is to get more money is to really move up the chain of command and become a supervisor, become a leader, work your way up. And a lot of people aren't suited for that and don't want that, but they're stuck, But
Mm.
I can see where electricians who learn new specialties and move up in different areas can continue to grow, especially if they're in a large organization with a lot of different kinds of work that they're doing.
We do a lot of work in the steel industry. And it blows my mind how often I talk to leaders and I say, okay, if I'm a journeyman iron worker, where do I go from there? And they're like, where do you want to go? I'm like, I want to go I want to take the next step that you allowed me to take.
Right.
And so often they don't think about it. It just blows my mind. And I know there's people listening like, no, they go, if they're not a journeyman, they go be a foreman. If they're a foreman, they go be a superintendent. And then from there, if they want to be an estimator, people have thought through it, but they don't just go build the step. We have the simplest little graphic. It just looks like a stair step and it just says go from here to here to here to here. And it takes companies weeks to get this back to me. And when it's done, I'm like, show it to your guys. And the guys are like, I had no idea. This is amazing. And I'm like, it's a 1-page graphic. It's so simple. We just don't think about that stuff. And I think communicating it with our people is really important to retaining them.
Mm-hmm.
The reason people leave you for $1 more an hour is because they don't see a path to $1 more an hour with you.
Oh yeah, that's a great way to say that. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
All you got to do is show them the path.
If we need to hire new positions and Where are employers posting those jobs now? I mean, where did the
Yeah.
trade? I mean, are you putting on those Indeed, or are you going to your local workforce center, or where do employers in the trades find their next generation of workers?
Yeah. So there's two issues here. One is, well, how fast do they need them? Right? Like that's the question I would want to know. I have yet to have a company call me and say, "Hey, I don't need to hire anybody this year, but I want to be ready for next year." Like that doesn't happen, right?
Right.
They call me and they go, "I'm 40 people short. I'm going to lose this job because my guys are burning out from working too much overtime. We're already upside down on it because of the overtime we're spending because we don't have enough people. Help." Well, I'm sorry, but if you need people yesterday, you've got to look for active job seekers. Those are the people that are on Indeed, they're on ZipRecruiter, they're on, they're talking to their friends. You got to look for them because they're the ones that are ready to jump fast. And so to solve that problem, it is Indeed. It is ZipRecruiter. It's set up an applicant tracking system so you can scale your efforts, be prepared to advertise or sponsor those jobs, and bring in a ton of volume, kiss a lot of frogs until you find that one or two
Yeah, we've
that are
all been
good.
down that path. Yeah.
But it's a volume game. And I wish there was a simpler way to do it. Uh, the only thing that I found that is simpler, but you can't do the volume with it. It's not as easy to do volume as employee referrals. Employee referrals can sometimes be pretty quick. But you got to be really careful. There's a lot of head trash around employee referral programs.
Mhm.
So I don't want to unpack that now. But that's one side. And then the other side is once you've stabilized and you don't need those 50 people to man all your jobs, uh, passive recruiting is the way to go. Employer branding. Become the employer of choice. Be that company that people seek out because they want to work there. And then once they're there, they'll fight like hell to stay because they want to stay there. So don't just put out the good marketing message, be that employer. Say you're the employer and be the employer. And that's what you have to do. And when you get there, which can take years sometimes, depending on what your reputation looks like, but once you're there, you will feel it. And all of a sudden, you'll have people that are saying, "Oh, you can't hire me today? I'll wait." And then
Mhm.
as soon as you're ready, you call them and they're like, "Finally, I'm coming over." And I see this happen. It can take years sometimes, but I do see it happen. And so for those people that want to really get to that next generation, start thinking about how do you become that desirable employer, that what we say employer of choice. The one where they say, out of all the options I have, I choose this one because of their value system, because of their vision, because of where they're going, because of the opportunities afforded to me. Put yourself in the shoes of the job seeker and say, what do they want? And then become that employer, and you won't struggle to hire ever again.
In the white collar world, I see a lot of complaints about the current employee selection process, the interview process, going through 4 or 5 interviews.
Ugh.
We just talked about it on our end of August podcast. That whole jumping through all these hoops for one job, and then somebody, only one person is going to get that role, and everybody else
Yeah.
feels like they've wasted a lot of time. What does it look like in the trades? I can't imagine that if they're eager to hire, they're putting candidates through those kind of hoops. But they're employers, so they'll always find a way to get in their own way in
They all
making a good
do.
hire. Yeah.
Here's what I'll tell you. If you're a job seeker right now and you want a job in the trades, just show up on time for your interview and it's yours.
Yeah. Okay.
Very
Nice.
little friction. Uh, and I'm a fan. I'm a fan of finding balance. So we use some fishing analogies. I don't know if you fish,
No.
uh, but we use some fishing analogies when we talk about recruiting. I have a whole keynote. Everything I need to know about recruiting, I learned from fishing. And one of the concepts is the concept of drag. Like drag is important when you're fishing. You've got to be able to let the fish run a little bit because if you don't, and that means that it pulls the line off the spool. If you don't let it pull line and run, it can't wear itself out, and you want it to
Hmm.
wear itself out a little bit. And but if you have the drag too tight, when it pulls, the line snaps and they get away. So you have to find a balance. And so I use that as a metaphor to say you have to find a balance around creating friction during the interview process. You don't want to move too fast because you're going to miss stuff, but you don't want to move too slow because at the end of the day, what's it like 97% of Americans can't go more than 2 weeks without a paycheck?
Right.
Like they got to make decisions fast. They don't have time to wait 6 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks. I heard one company, oh, it was a government, 9 months from the first interview to the time you were hired. Like, who has time for that? I got to move
And
now. I hate my boss.
yeah, and this is an
Doesn't it?
organizations where nobody wants to take responsibility for the decision or
Yeah.
be, if this doesn't work out, I don't want the
I
blame.
want to
And
blame what we talked about. It's easier to
yeah,
blame someone else. So I like to find that balance, create a little bit of friction. Uh, when it comes to the trades, what we see is the best is to focus more on culture fit, thinking the way we think, acting the way we act, doing the kinds of things our way. That's more of a focus for us than can I operate the equipment, right? Can I weld? Can I do those things? Now you got to be able to do that stuff, and they got to
you
be able
got
to
to
do
have
it
the basic
physically. You
competencies,
got to
right?
be.
Yeah.
If you don't have mechanical aptitude, sorry, like maybe you need to do
Yeah.
something else. But when you assess for that cultural fit, that means that when you say, "Hey, safety is really important to us around here," they go, "Well, duh." Like that's what you
Mhm.
want. That's a culture
Right.
fit. Um, when you assess for that first, everything else, the skill set, the equipment, your company's processes, all that can be taught
Mhm.
because they are engaged and they want to be on your team. And so that's where I like to create some friction is in behavior. So uh, our interview processes. So we have a 4-stage interview process, but that doesn't mean 4 meetings. It can be all one meeting, but it's 4 stages. So when you're going through the interview, you first look at non-negotiables. Do I want to spend more time with this person? Then when you're
Mhm.
done with that, do they think like we think? Will they fit in here? Culture. Then can they do the job? Do they have those basic skills and competencies? And then finally, this one always gets missed in the trades. Let's still have a conversation around the offer. Let's set proper expectations with each other. Let's talk about day one. Let's talk about the next 2 weeks while you're turning in your notice. Let's talk about these things. Get everyone on the same page. We skip that because usually we're so excited. They said yes. We're like,
Mhm.
woohoo. Um, so you do have to create a little bit of friction, but it's less about the employer and more about that candidate. You really want them to want this. And when you move too fast, you look like every other employer on the planet in the trades.
Mhm.
And guess what? They're at an employer now that they don't want to be at, probably because the employer moved too fast. So if you look like them, if you act like them, guess what they're thinking? Out of the frying pan into the fryer.
And let's take a quick break. Good Morning HR is brought to you by Imperative, bulletproof background checks with fast and friendly service. Imperative is the background investigations partner for employers who want to make well-informed decisions about the people they involve in their business. I could share dozens of technical details about how we ensure that our research is more thorough, our reporting more robust, and our compliance stricter than other firms. But the real magic is my amazing team and the white glove treatment they give every client. If you deserve that kind of treatment and want to make well informed hiring decisions that help avoid loss, liability, and litigation, reach out to us at imperativeinfo.com. If you're an HRCI or SHRM certified professional, this episode of Good Morning HR has been pre-approved for 1/2 hour of recertification credit. To obtain the recertification information, visit goodmorninghr.com and click on Research Credits. Then select episode 218 and enter the keyword blue collar. That's all one word, no spaces, BLUECOLLAR. And if you're looking for even more recertification credit, check out the webinars page at imperativeinfo.com. And now back to my conversation with Ryan Englin. Right.
That's not
And it's interesting because that we talk about that a lot. Employers needing to move slower through the process, and I'm a big advocate of, especially on the white collar side, looking for ways for individuals to demonstrate their competencies through the application process, or their behaviors through the application process. So if I'm hiring somebody who's going to be sitting in front of 2 or 3 computer monitors all day long doing high level data entry work, I'm going to design that employment application process to be kind of tedious so that people like me who are a real ADD and can focus for about 8 minutes will bail out of the
I
process.
love it.
But if I'm hiring a salesperson or somebody like me, it needs to be real brief. Give me a chance to talk about myself. I'll be thrilled. And then you can dig into the interview quickly, but make that process online as simple for those people like me as possible. And it's interesting that, looking for behavior in the trades, it just makes sense. We don't think about it because we think these are hard technical skill roles and I just need a really good, but it would make sense that that's everywhere. It's behavior. Employers everywhere are not saying I don't have the technical skills in the labor market. I don't have the people skills. I don't have the emotional intelligence,
Yeah.
the conflict resolution, all those kinds of issues.
It's I'll give you two examples just like the one you gave. So one example is we get a lot of times guys in the trades, they don't have reliable transportation. They don't know how to show up on to work on time. Like we just know this. So we need to test
Mhm.
for it. So one of the things we tell them in the job ad is, "Hey, we believe that early is on time and on time is late. So when you schedule your interview, we expect you to be here 10 minutes early." Like we give them the answer to the test,
Mhm.
right? And then when they show up 10 minutes late, they've already failed question number one. We haven't
Mhm.
even talked to them. The other thing I see happen in interviews on the service side, when you look at service contractors, is they never interview people in the environment in which they will be working. And the example I always like to give is the customer service rep or the inside sales rep. What do? We bring the person into our office, we sit across our conference room table, and we have a face to face conversation. And it goes great and we love it. And then the day one starts and we say, oh, by the way, 99.9% of the time you're on a phone.
Mhm.
And they just mess it all up. Those are two different skill sets, two
Right.
different types of mindsets and behaviors. So I tell people all the time, anytime you are interviewing a CSR, do not video. You can do face to face to meet them, but send them to another room and the interview is over the phone. You'll be able to gauge their phone presence. You'll be able to have difficult conversations and see how they respond, see how well they communicate on the phone. But we never do this because we think, I just need somebody so fast. I don't care. And they looked great in person. So we hire them.
So putting them in that element, that's an especially on that CSR type role or that phone based role. That's really smart because yeah, I've never thought about that. I'm totally ripping that one off. Thanks for
Well,
that one,
I
Ryan.
mean, your whole example of the data entry, I mean, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
You just test them
Right.
earlier than I do. Like, right? It's the
Yeah.
same
Yeah.
thing.
If
Yeah.
they yeah, because I want them to bail out. I mean, ideally, they either read the job description. I write the job description so that somebody like me would see it and say, "Oh, hell no." But then
And that's
somebody,
what you need to
there are
do.
people I've got, a couple dozen employees who love that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And they see it and they're like, "Oh, this is home for me. I don't have to I don't have a lot of high level of social interaction. I just get to work. I get to check box, check box, check
Y-
box."
it's interesting. You brought up job ads. Travel all over the country talking to people, and I ask them all the same question. To finish this sentence, people don't leave jobs, they leave
You hear
people.
managers a lot. Yeah,
Managers,
people. Yeah.
people, right? That's what they
Yeah.
leave. Yet, why is it that every advertisement for a job is all about the job?
Mhm.
So when we write job ads, it's not about the job. If you're an electrician, you know what an electrician does. Are we
Right.
going to have the requirements so that we compliant and all that? Yes. But let's talk about the person you're going to work for. Let's talk about
Mhm.
your manager. Let's talk about how we do leadership, how we do communication, how we celebrate wins here. Let's talk about the culture stuff because that's what people are looking for. They're looking for a new leader. They're not looking for a new job.
Yeah, and that's a big part of our stuff. My people work so well together, and we lead with that in the interview. I mean, this is or not in the job posting. This is who you're working with. If you like to work independently, you like to check off boxes, you like to get work done, but you like to do it in a collaborative environment where you can rely on your peers to have your back and get support you and get work done. Then we're the place for you. And if you
Yeah.
want to be the who support your peers. And so that's really really good stuff. But you know what? I want to ask one last question because we're way over right on time. But
I could talk
um,
about this forever.
yeah,
So
and actually too, it's really interesting to see the corollaries in a space that I've not done much work in. But what about we have a tendency, I think universally, somebody is a really good electrician or whatever, so we make them a supervisor or a manager over these other people. Is that I'm assuming that happens in the trades, and what do but we need those supervisors, we need those managers.
yeah.
How do you see employers making those investments in people to get them ready for those kind of roles?
Yeah, the Peter principle translates over to
Oh,
the
for sure.
trades. It
Yeah.
does. We do it all the time. Uh, quick short story. I had a client that had the best foreman they had. And they're like, I think he's superintendent material. I'm like, what did he say when you asked him? Oh, he can't wait. It's a $30,000 a year pay bump, right? So he's
All
like,
right.
heck yeah. 6 months later, my client comes to me, he goes, I'm going to fire him. He's done. I said, why? He's not cutting it as superintendent. You encouraged him to do this, right?
Yeah, whose
Like,
idea was this, right?
like,
Yeah.
have you talked to him? Like, he's going to be surprised when you fire him. He's like, he's probably going to be surprised. I'm like, okay, you have work to do. And he went and talked to the guy and he says, how would you feel about being a foreman again? And the guy's like, can I do that? Like, I didn't know that was an option. Yes, please make me a foreman again. Guy's his top foreman. So they do it all the time. To answer your question, how they prepare people, I'm going to get some hate mail for this. They don't. They don't. They take their top person and they say, you're ready.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the worst thing that they can do. And they are the ones that are always encouraging it. The employer's always like, I need a superintendent. What do you say? Do you want to be it? And of course, what's the person going to say?
Right.
No, I don't want 30 grand more a year. No, they're not. They're not going to want to tell their boss no. Because in their mind, they're like, if I tell him no now, he's never going to ask me again.
Right.
So that's why we create opportunities for growth. We create career path plans, and we sit down and we share them with everybody who wants to be on the career path. And when they raise their hand, great. Now we're going to talk about how to get there. You might be a laborer and you want to be a superintendent. That's a 10-year path. Hey, I could use an employee here for 10 years that's helping me with it. But they typically don't spend time doing it. Usually what happens is, what we've seen is they'll move someone into that role, whether willingly or begrudgingly, and then they'll say, okay, now we need to fix it. And then at that point, they'll seek out support. They'll be like, okay, they're struggling with this, they're struggling with that. And then they'll start prescribing solutions for each one of those different things if they really want that person to stay. But that's another big issue we're running into in the trades. We're running out of leaders because we're not training them. We want the other guy to train them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so that's a real challenge too. That's why one of the big things we do is I don't do the training and we don't develop all the curriculum, but we encourage them. We work with them. Okay, talk about the communication. Now let's find some ways to train that, whether it's a third party or someone else, and bring that training in because your people need it. Whether
Are
you're
there coaches that are set up to do that individual leadership training and coaching in the trades who are that is, we've got plenty of them in the white collar world, people who can come in and, if you'll make the investment, they can spend the time to get that high performer, maybe a little less rough around the edges and give them a little bit of insight into people and just help them understand their own behavior. Do they have that for the trades, or maybe I need to go learn a trade and get into that business?
Yeah, there's not enough of them. I'll tell you that. There's not enough. There's a couple that I know. There's a gal out of Canada that she teaches empathy in the trades, which is really needed skill. Amazing.
Right.
There's another gal on the West Coast that she just does general leadership training. And then there's a company that I found. They've got coaches. They'll fly coaches anywhere, but they'll actually do it in multiple languages, which I love. Like they've got Spanish speakers, which is huge for the trades. And it's just general leadership training. There's not a lot of people out there that are doing leadership training that is for the skilled trades. Like one thing people don't think about is when I take a superintendent off a job site and his 3 foremen off a job site, I'm shutting down that job site. So not only am I spending money on the leadership training, but I got to send 12 guys home, or I got to pay them to stand around and do nothing. Like the investment is way more than just go to leadership training.
Right.
And so one of the things that we found when we do little bits of like micro learnings around leadership training is they're 30-minute classes and they're done virtually. And that's it. Because a guy can sneak away around lunch. He can show up 30 minutes late, stay 30 minutes after the shift, don't have to shut the job site down, doesn't cost anything extra, and you can do that. But I find a lot of leadership trainers, they want to be in classroom for a day. And that's the big shift that you'd have to make if you wanted to be in the trades.
I'm still not convinced, even in the corporate world, that having a bunch of butts in seat for a whole day together is the way to teach this. I mean, so much you can teach some concepts, but people become better leaders through coaching and working with people who understand and can help them understand themselves. That's the biggest problem. Every leader's biggest problem is not the employees. It's the stuff that's going on between their ears and how they think about the world and see themselves.
Yeah. One of the things we do is we talk a lot about trust. In the trades, trust is,
because safety and everything else. Yeah.
I got to be able to trust the guy next to me. We talk about trust. And so what we'll do is we'll get together and we'll introduce one tool to help with trust. And it might be, asking probing questions. It might be active listening. We introduce one tool and that's it. And then we say, go out for the next 3 weeks and work on this. There's a couple of touch points, and then we get together and we go, how'd it go? And it might take 6 months for them to learn that tool, but you know what? We're making progress, but that's how they learn, is by doing it. Remember, they're tradesmen.
Yeah.
Work with their hands. They learn by doing. They don't learn by sitting in a classroom. And I think that's a big shift that would have to be made for that to happen.
That's interesting. Well, like I said, we're up on time. I really appreciate you joining me, Ryan. It flew by.
Thanks for having me. It was great.
And Ryan's contact information will be in the show notes, and a link to get his book. It'll be in the show notes, and he's giving away an autographed copy for free if you just reach out to him. So the link will be in the show notes to do that. And thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please write us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you're listening. And share this episode on your favorite social media platform. It helps us reach more listeners. And we'd love to hear your thoughts at goodmorninghr.com. Good Morning HR is produced by Marianne Hernandez and Paco Corral on Imperative's marketing team. The Good Morning HR theme music was created by Steve Pegler at HR Strategies of Texas. And I'm Mike Coffey. As always, don't hesitate to reach out if I could be of service to you personally or professionally. I'll see you next week, and until then, be well, do good, and keep your chin up.